I'm Joel Boivin. I'm a registered nurse working with Sudbury Action Centre for Youth, and I've been specializing in harm reduction for about 12 years now. Really, what I've witnessed in my 12 years of doing this work has not necessarily been an emergence of opioids. What I've really witnessed has been a shift in opioids and what opioids are actually available. So that's a common misconception nowadays in terms of a lot of people feel like opioid use is increasing significantly when the increase isn't as dramatic as many think. The real piece that has increased has been the potency of the street supply. So when you first engage in opiates on the street supply, you're likely to bump into something that is at least as potent as fentanyl. So that is where many youth are very struggled in first finding out that opiates are something that they enjoy, because they are really jumping into some of the most potent opiates that they can come across. This can be a very overwhelming experience to try and get away from in early ages. Some of the misconceptions, so a lot of it comes down to a lot of the public ideas that we have about someone who consumes substances. So a lot of the idea that I spoke of the shame, of the lack of future, of even somebody's employability. So just simple things like that, even if you are prescribed a medication and really depend on it to be able to maintain your health, might impact your employability. It might impact your ability to obtain an apartment. If it is that you aren't prescribed it and you're accessing through a street supply, it could result in criminalization and jail time. So these are a lot of the ideas that we have around substance use that when you actually stop to talk to a person who uses substances, you might find that so much of this doesn't apply, that they are very skilled individuals that are just as much full aware of each other, of themselves and their own skill set as any of us. You will very much find a human being in there. And unfortunately, that's often not the image that we paint as a general public around someone who uses drugs. Social stigma plays a big role in, one, even being able to access the care and services that you're seeking, but two, to also be able to maintain your own, what we call autonomy, your independent decision making around your own health care. So that is one of the things about kind of our idea around people who use substances, is that the implication is that they can't be trusted with their own decisions, that they have to be told how it is that they need to address their life and move forward, that they need to be told what their goals are and what is the most important focus in their life at this time. So for example, if you're going into hospital with a broken arm, but they find out that you use substances, well, as much pain and everything else that you might need to be addressed at the moment, the entire focus quickly becomes addiction. If somebody's going through trauma and is finding that trauma more survivable because of the opiate that's there, while they're waiting this treatment that is sometimes 6 months, a year, a couple years away on a wait list, it is keeping them alive. And we are actually criticizing them for something that is essential to them to stay alive. That is part of the reality of substance use today, and very much a part of how things like colonization, stigma, race, everything all kind of interplays in recognizing that one of the grandest issues to Indigenous people today, transgenerational trauma, is not recognized as an official recognized indication for opiates, and that is something that still leaves many people at risk today. We have a variety of community supports available, and a big piece to that is the treatment center approach. So we do have brief counseling that's available in the streets very easily. There are a variety of services that if you access them, like CMHA or a place like SASE with harm reduction teams, or even some local counseling offices, there are some supports in place for getting through the day. Some of the longer term supports that are available include things like addictions treatment, trauma treatment, but unfortunately with a lot of these treatments, the reality is that they do require full abstinence, and that is where many people are not quite ready for that full big leap yet. For a lot of people, especially if they are using the effects of a substance to cope with something like trauma, somebody might not be able to talk about their trauma without being on opiates. And for that, the expectation that you need to get abstinent first. You need to be off of drugs entirely before we start treating your addiction. For many, this is a very unrealistic expectation. So there are more progressive programs that are around in Canada too, but smaller in number and thus having longer wait lists. They are harm reduction-based treatment programs. So they are treatment programs where you may enter the program while still actively in addiction, while still using substances, but while receiving that relief that you've found helpful all that time through addiction, you're also able to talk about things like trauma. You're able to revisit some of those deeper issues that may be addressing more of that core issue. That is where recovery really comes about. Those are the pieces that we really need more of in our society. Those pieces that take people from wherever that they're at, even if that is right in the middle of substance use and addiction, without requiring abstinence to be able to access addiction treatment, or abstinence to be able to access trauma treatment, or trauma treatment to access addictions treatment as well. These are all things that we still need to actively address before we start considering, things like mandated treatment or things like that, where we're not truly sure that we have the supports in place for every situation under the sun.